Hi, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek podcast for Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Hey, got back from vacation a while ago and had, of course, a week of work, and now it was a long week. I had to go out and do some training with a company out in Missoula, and I hope they certainly enjoyed that opportunity. That was great to be with them, to go out and show them the ropes in terms of vertebrate pest control. So really enjoyed doing that in terms of my day job. Hope you had a vacation before. I'm now recording on September 1st, 2023. Hope you got a little vacation in over the summer if you don't have kids, and certainly after the kids are back in school, prices drop a little bit as well as things kind of open up. So certainly that may be an opportunity for you as well. Do take a few moments if you would. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, give us a 5-star rating. We definitely appreciate that. And of course, you can also reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Of course, even if you have something negative to say, we'll take that as well. Perhaps you may have ideas for future shows, topics that you would like to have covered. And then, of course, if you have someone that you think we should be interviewing, or perhaps some new product that you have, we would love to have you on the show. Part of our mission is to get information and new techniques and tools out to the wider wildlife control audience. We do have individuals that don't do wildlife control watching the video, of course, but our show is designed for the professional rather than the general public per se. But of course, anyone is welcome to watch the show. All right, enough about all that. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about an email I received that was a little critical. I can't say it was harsh. It wasn't harsh. I thought it was certainly constructive criticism. So not all criticism criticism generally isn't welcomed per se. In other words, someone's like, yay, I got criticism today. But nevertheless, some criticism is more destructive and mean and personal rather than dealing with a particular issue or topic. And this certainly dealt with a particular issue and topic. It was about a video I recorded way back in February. What's the date I have down here? February 18th, 2022. And I'll show you that video here. It's the Wildlife Control Consultant, Stephen Vantassel, demos the Victor M4620 Zapper Max outdoor rat trap. Whew. Okay, so basically it is an electronic trap for rats and mice that can be used outdoors. It's not waterproof, okay, just to be clear. It's not something you can just simply stick out in your yard. You need to watch out for flooding and driving rain, that sort of thing. But certainly indoors and in protected areas outdoors. And it's an electronic trap that's designed. So as more and more people are having concern about secondary poisoning and even primary poisoning with rodenticides, of course, we're all waiting for the EPA to come out with its ruling, after its interim decision regarding rodenticides. As you know, I commented on that with previous podcasts as well as on a professional level. I did respond to some of the suggestions that the EPA was making. Not all of them were bad, to be fair, but a good number of them were, in my opinion, not scientifically based and had some untoward effects that would have on the constituencies that I certainly deal with. But that, I'll leave you to watch those other videos and see my comments on that. But nevertheless, the concern about primary and secondary poisoning with rodenticides is certainly legitimate. And Traps such as this, electronic traps, are part of the matrix of tools that can be useful in helping us reduce and help mitigate some of the negative effects of the rodenticides. So if one of the ways to reduce the effects of rodenticide poisonings is to reduce the amount of rodenticides we're using to begin with, right? And so this is one tool that's part of it. So I commented on it. And of course, there's also a growing movement within the United States for quote unquote humane control of rodents and, rats and mice, and for finding methods that cause them less pain and suffering. As you all know, I am not an animal rights activist. However, I also think that it is important to be thinking about how can we reduce the pain and suffering of the animals that we're controlling. But for me, the issue is within limits. In other words, it needs to be cost effective. And for me, the principle is 10%. If a technique is 10% more expensive than the less humane method, then I think we have a moral obligation to start moving in that direction. Nevertheless, at no point should we simply be using methods and tools that are just as effective, that are more humane than those that are less humane, especially if they cost the same price. I mean, I think that's just silly. I hope you would agree with that if you have two methods, they both cost the same, they're both the same efficacy rate, they're both the same convenience factor, and this one causes more pain to a rodent and this one causes less pain to a rodent, I hope we would all agree that we should probably start moving to this new one. Yeah, I understand you'd have to purchase a new product. The sunk cost of this one's already been paid for. But I hope in terms of all things being equal, if we have an option, we should be moving in that direction. The difference that I would have with various animal protectionist groups, of course, would be that they just, they don't see things necessarily in the economic framework as much as I would. And I think that's part of the framework that we must consider. Because for me, an animal is an animal, a human is a human, and they're fundamentally different things. Nevertheless, I got a letter which was I took it as a little bit of offering some criticism of my video. So I took a little time and reviewed what I said in that particular video, and I just want to kind of read for you some highlights from this letter. It's not very long. I'm going to maintain the person's privacy here, and basically tell you what this individual said. And it said, "I just bought the subject trap and watched your YouTube review to better understand it. I have to say that the trap came with one of the poorest set of instructions I've seen in quite a while. I thought you might have had something to say about that." Well, the fact is I didn't comment on the instructions. And as I informed him, one of the things when you are dealing with traps as much as I have, you often don't read the directions for the traps. You only read them if you come up with a snafu and you have a little bit of difficulty because you kind of just figure it out. So his comment there about my video was certainly correct. And you can see the video there on the screen. And I didn't do that. So fair enough. I think that's a fair comment. I didn't comment about that. And I think just to be, fair to myself, I do tend to talk toward professionals. So I sort of assume a certain level of knowledge and information in my audience that I have to remind myself, and this is where the letter, I think, offers a fair criticism, reminding me that, I need to think about that non-professionals are watching my show as well. So I need to be more cognizant of that when I'm doing my presentation. So fair enough, I will definitely take that. He says, the parts diagram was so indistinct as to be almost useless and made the description of how to disassemble the trap to put the battery in is hard to figure out. I'll take him at his word for that. I can't recall if I was really paying a whole lot of attention to the directions. And the lack of the firm, snap-together fit of the parts made me question if I was doing it correctly at first. Again, I will just take him at his word at that. When I looked at my video, things looked like some of the inadequacies of directions should have been helped, in my opinion, with my video, granted, I did not engage the details of the directions, but I think if someone was watching me handle the trap, it should have given them additional insight on how to take the trap apart and then put the trap back together. So I'm not exactly sure how that goes. And the reality is that writing how-tos or directions is difficult, and the fact is some manufacturers just do a really poor job of it. I can't say whether Victor did a good or bad job on it per se, because I haven't looked back at the directions of the device, but nevertheless, it is hard, and there are occasions when manufacturers don't do it well enough because it's time consuming, it's expensive, you have to hire someone to do it. You have to go through the review process, and sometimes you just want to get it out the door to start making money, because the production research on this trap was probably quite expensive. So, Victor's a business, they're trying to make a living, and so sometimes corners get cut, and I don't know that they cut corners on the directions. I'm just saying that is certainly, if that happened, that is certainly an explanation for it. I'm not trying to justify it, I'm just simply saying sometimes we just have to sort of cut some people some slack, because I find the same thing that happens in the wildlife control field. I've read a lot of books, viewed a lot of videos in the wildlife control field, in the trapping field, fur trapping field, and frankly, sometimes their information's not all that clear. And where a little bit of editing would have gone a long way. And I can tell you that people are not beating down my door to get me to hire me to edit. So, not that I am the sum-all and be-all, but the fact of the matter is, why didn't they do that? Well, because it costs money, and they're trying to make a living, and it's time-consuming. I had a friend of mine, he published a book, and I'm like, well, why didn't you ask me to help him? It wouldn't have cost that much money. So, in any event, people just sometimes out of sight, out of mind. So, I'll just leave that as that. Case in point is the lid with two hold-down latches that didn't seem to latch firmly to anything. I didn't find that with mine, so maybe there was a little bit of problem with the manufacturing of his device. And the bait cup, he says, was so poorly described that at first I didn't know how it came apart or how to open it. I can see that. I can definitely see that. I hope that my video showed. I didn't really detail on how to open it up, but I hope that the fact that you saw me open it up, I hope that certainly helped you understand its function and how it worked. You just drop it down with no positive fit, no big deal, but you think they would mention that, so no, you're not puzzling over it. I guess for me, when he's talking about the bait cup, it just seemed natural for me, and so I did not comment on that per se, other than just simply, hey, here's the bait cup, I just dropped it back in. There is no LED notification after you close the lid and put the trap in place that it's still powered on if you were checking on it after several days. Fair enough. I probably should have mentioned that. My suspicion is that having the light on at that particular point, or either to show you that it is armed and ready to go, I'm wondering if that would help drain the battery more, or require some additional wiring, which then again increases the cost of the trap. So, but fair enough, you do have to kind of take it on faith that when you push the button and the light turns on and then it goes off, that it's still on and that sort of thing. So that can be a little disconcerting. But my video did discuss the warning it gives you when the battery is starting to go low, and the warning it gives you if the trap's been fired. He offered some specific comments for my video, and that, as he says, perhaps explain some of the above, and then, I have, of course, here, according to Victor, the trap is designed for use indoors or outdoors. I didn't see that necessarily in my literature. I think I believe, if I remember correctly from my video, it talked about that it's indoors. But I did mention if you're using it outdoors, make sure it's protected away from flooding. And I did mention probably should be caveated that not in flooding or blowing rain conditions. I mentioned that in my video, so that I did cover. I did mention the battery issue. He talked about lithium batteries are specified to meet their advertised lasts up to 3 years. I can't speak to that again. I didn't pay a lot of attention to the directions. I'll take his word for it there. I think 3 years would be pretty hard to maintain. I noted that when I used regular Duracell copper top batteries, I got about 3 months worth of control, but that was also in cold conditions in an unheated garage. And of course, it can get kind of cold here in October and November. I think I did it from September to December, so you're looking at October, November, December, so 3 months. And it can get quite cold here in November, December. Of course, that will also eat a battery a little bit, and then of course it fired once. I do think that, although I haven't tested it this way, I do think that the Energizer lithium, that's the silver AA batteries, would have worked better and lasted longer. There's been some good experience. I've had good success with it, not with this particular trap, but in trail cameras, because I got that tip from a friend of mine when I was working at the university, and they used Energizer lithium AA's for their trail camera studies, and they were very happy with that particular battery. They said for the cost benefit ratio, because they are more expensive than the regular Energizers, that you got far more use out of them that covered the cost, the additional cost of the batteries plus, was my impression from his conversation. So that's what I would suggest. I completely agree with the person who wrote the letter that the 7 screws holding down the batteries, the battery lid, is really annoying, and it absolutely is. And I did clearly mention that within my video. So here's an example. I promised the individual that I would respond to his letter by a podcast. Appreciate the letter. I think that he had some points that I definitely need to consider. So let me highlight some of those. Number one, I need to keep in mind that my audience is bigger than professionals. Ditto. Fair enough. I do need to do that. And secondly, that perhaps I need to be a little harder and be a little more critical in my evaluation of products. My tendency is to accentuate the positive of products. Part of the reason is because anyone can be critical. I have enough enemies in this industry. I don't need to be creating more per se, but fair enough. I probably should have given a little bit more critical review, critical not in the sense of trying to tear something down, but a little more review to just show you the pros and cons and some things that you have to think about in terms of the features of the trap. And I think that would have been helpful so that you can make a better purchase decision. But I also want to just point out that I think it's easy to be critical. Anyone can do it. Anyone can throw rocks. We desperately need more individuals, more companies to provide us additional tools and resources for the wildlife control industry. So I am loath to just be too negative right off the bat. So I can try to give constructive criticism, and I will endeavor to do that, but I will be less Pollyannish positive, I guess, maybe the word that I want to use, and be a little bit more hard-nosed, I guess, a little bit, without being into Mr. Negativity. So I will take that as well. So that's my response to this individual. Thank you very much, of course, for your letter. We do appreciate feedback that's constructive, and I do take your letter as constructive. I didn't see it as mean-spirited, and that is certainly appreciated. And I will, I think some of the comments kind of missed the point in terms of what I put into the presentation, so I will put those aside. But I do think you made a couple of other points that either directly or indirectly that I definitely need to consider, and I will do that. So letting you know that writing to me that I do read my emails. If I don't respond to you, it might have slipped past me. I do get a fair amount, but nevertheless, reach out to me again. Again, you reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you, your triumphs, your trials, what shows that you would like to have, topics that you would like to have covered. Perhaps there's a question that you have that you're not quite sure how you're going to handle that. Of course, I am available for direct consultation as well, but if you're looking for free advice, then send me the question. I might bring it up in a future podcast, and then you get my opinion, of course, for free. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk about what interests me. And of course, we would love to have you subscribe to the channel, join us on Facebook with the Pest Geek Podcast family. We'd love to have you there to share your triumphs and trials and to share ideas with one another. We'd love to have you there. Of course, if you don't like dealing with YouTube, you can also visit me on Rumble, and I would just go to Wildlife Control Consultant, and my channel will come up there. Actually, I publish my videos actually sooner on Rumble than they come out on YouTube. So you've been listening to Living the Wildlife. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Well, because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.